It's being reported that the SCOTUS consideration of the bill that would effectively outlaw TikTok inside of the United States, they're probably gonna allow it to go forward. See, Donald Trump had been pressuring them not to do that, and in fact to postpone this consideration. So they didn't do that, and now they've been having the arguments. And the word, like from those listening to it, is that they seem to be accepting the government's case here. And so here's what you need to know about all of this if you're a user of the app and you want to know whether you're going to be able to use it and for how much longer. The ban is currently set for January 19th. So today, the Supreme Court heard the arguments both for and against that ban, and it's expected that they're going to expedite the ruling on whether the ban can go forward, which they sort of need to because they only have 9 days until it's about to happen. So we expect next week to probably hear what their actual ruling is going to be. And so if you haven't been following this legislative path, Congress passed and Joe Biden signed a bill to require ByteDance, which is the parent company that owns the app TikTok as well as other apps, to divest from it. And if they don't, TikTok would be removed from the App Store, which would not literally take it off of your phone. You'd still be able to use it, but because these app stores would not be allowed to host the app, they also wouldn't be allowed to update the app, and so it would eventually become outdated and cease to function. There are also some things having to do with like cloud storage of information that ByteDance implies. Once that's shut down, that would also stop the app from functioning. So there's multiple reasons to think that it might not last much longer once the ban goes through. And so there were a lot of arguments that were being thrown around. The justices expressed concerns initially that the law was in tension with the First Amendment. That's one of the cases that TikTok, the lawyers for TikTok are making. But the government offered two rationales for the law. One, to combat covert disinformation from China and barring it from harvesting private information from Americans. So the court was divided over whether the first justification was sufficient to justify the ban, but several did seem troubled by the possibility that China could use data culled from the app for espionage or blackmail. And several justices were skeptical about a major part of the government's justification, that being that China might covertly make TikTok manipulate the content, the algorithm effectively, that Americans would see, or collect user data to achieve its geopolitical aims. And that's a thing that you've probably heard quite a bit, including on Fox News. Here's Brian Kilmeade recently making a version of that argument.
Most young people are getting the news from TikTok. They have a great algorithm, they have a great business plan. But try to find some pro-Israel stories on the timeline, on the news feed for TikTok. Now, if the tariffs go against China, you watch slowly but surely a lot of the pro-tariff talk will take a lower profile to the pro-tariff talk, to the anti-tariff talk, because it goes to China. Do you want China controlling the #1 news feed for the next generation of Americans?
Okay, so he started off making what seemed like a legal argument, and then in the end, it seemed like he was just advocating for censorship. That's kind of what it sounded like. Isn't it weird that the kids on TikTok aren't being nice enough to Israel? And I love the premise of his second part, by the way, that soon we'll hear less pro-tariff talk on TikTok, which is a thing that the kids are doing now, I guess. I don't think that Brian Kilmeade uses TikTok. But anyway, Yaz, I wanna start with you. We don't know for sure what the Supreme Court is going to do. And it's also possible, by the way, that the app could be legalized through later legislation. There's a few things that could be done. But what do you make of its chances at this point?
It does seem like it's going to go away on the 19th. At least that is what the way the Supreme Court justices seem to be leaning. And as he did mention, there are some ways that we could still have TikTok. They could still negotiate for an American buyer and a few other things. But I feel like this audience knows by now that I don't really love social media or TikTok in general. And, I feel a little bit like the Michael Jackson Thriller meme where I'm just like sitting back and watching and eating my popcorn, which is crazy for someone who does my job. But I do think it's interesting that all of this is going down at around the same time that Meta is now declining to fact check its posts on its platforms while also flooding its platforms with bots. So it's going to make it, if Facebook was a cesspool before, it's going to be even more so. And it almost seems like he's doing this in an effort to just inflate numbers, right? If you have a bunch of fake users, you can claim, oh, look, there's so much engagement, but it's not people who are on it. So part of me takes a little bit of comfort in that, because if you get on Facebook these days, it is crazy. It's a crazy place, right? You look in comment sections and you can already see that it is full of bots. You'll read the exact same comment multiple times in a thread. And at first, I just thought that people were really unoriginal, but then you're like, no, these aren't even real people. These are fake. And that's supposed to get even worse. So overall, the experience on these platforms is worse, right? You don't want to be on it. The social aspect of social media is dwindling, and it's being deliberately dwindled down. And you sort of mentioned this earlier, John, when you said that there would be less platforms for people to use now if they keep eliminating them on whatever grounds. And as much as I don't like social media, I will agree that that's not necessarily a good thing. The thing that's supposed to make capitalism somewhat just is competition. Instead, we are constantly eliminating competition these days. And you especially see that in the tech industry, and you especially see that in media, where all these big billionaires are buying out media companies, et cetera. So it doesn't set up for a very hospitable landscape for free thought, despite what Zuckerberg is going everywhere talking about.
Yeah, look. First of all, the good news is if someone has a podcast, they can start their podcast TikTok, which is where they talk about ticks. Finally, they got the title. It's theirs. They won't get in trouble. Just put it out there. If anybody wants to do a podcast about ticks, today's your day.
John and I are from Connecticut. We should do that podcast.
We should. Lyme disease updates twice a week.
It's an idea. Yeah, I'm on TikTok. I don't understand it. I post something that I think is the best stand-up bit I've ever done in my entire life, and it gets 5 views. And then I post something that I'm like, this thing's stupid, and it gets millions of views. So I don't understand it. I don't get how it works. I can see how it could be manipulated. Obviously, like, if I were to go on there and say, China is trying to take over Taiwan or whatever, I can't imagine, China being the government that it is, how they could manipulate it and control it. I wonder if are our social media, as Instagram and Facebook and all those, are those in China or not? Do we know?
The algorithms?
Can people get Instagram in China and use Instagram?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I don't know. Actually,
so I wonder if the reverse
if they'll do retaliatory bans. Yeah, maybe they could.
Yeah, but also like we could manipulate their politics. I mean, it's just just like Yaz was saying, these companies have so much power and they have so much of our information. I mean, this idea of saying, oh, TikTok is calling information from you and getting your your knows who your friends are, and all the apps do that. When you go on any app, it says, can I have access to your phone book? And a lot of times you're like, sure, why not? Yeah, he's moving forward. So it seems like a bit of an uphill battle here in terms of, unless if you're able to just unplug. I personally think that they're going to find some way, because I know that, going back to the fact that Donald Trump is about making deals and he's all about he's a grifter. I think there's going to be, because the owner of ByteDance had gone down to Mar-a-Lago and paid a visit to him. I feel like there's going to be
Jeff, yes.
Yeah, there's going to be some back channel talks or some way to get this.
Yeah, It is definitely possible. So Jeff, yes, at least at one point last year, had a 7% stake in the parent company. It was about $21 billion. So he's not like the singular owner, but he's a big investor. And so he definitely seems like he leaned on Donald Trump, and he's given tons of money to Republican candidates and organizations. And so the entire thing feels, Trump's switch on it feels utterly corrupt. He was calling for the app to be banned. Then they handed over a bunch of money to his party, and now he's the biggest advocate for it. This is just bribery. That's all it is, legalized bribery. But that said, it could be effective bribery, because there are a couple paths to keeping TikTok functioning. So the Supreme Court could actually strike down the ban. That is still possible. Also, they could allow the ban to go forward, and Donald Trump could just not enforce it. He could tell the DOJ, don't actually fine or penalize in any way Apple or Android or whatever if they leave TikTok on it. Now, legal analysts believe that they would be unlikely to expose themselves to even theoretical legal trouble, so they probably would take it down. But he could just not enforce it. Also, he could pressure the Republicans to pass new legislation allowing it to return. Now, that would take a lot of doing because Republicans, almost every single Republican in the House voted for the ban. They voted at higher rates than the Democrats did. But he also has the entire party in an absolute stranglehold. So maybe he could get them to do that. And as one of you did reference, this could be the stimulus or the trigger point for ByteDance to actually do the divesting, which they have not shown any interest or effort in doing, but maybe after this they would. And so there's still a lot of ways that it could potentially still be available, but we've moved closer to it shutting down. And I would also just say, like, I don't regularly use TikTok anymore either, just because I can't use social media anymore. I have a newborn, and it's just, I don't know how anybody posts with a toddler. It's just too much work, and I'm too tired. And that said, I understand the concerns about them potentially manipulating the algorithm, but I also think, like, what social media platform are they not doing that on? I'm not saying like the Communist Party or whatever, but has anybody seen what's happened to Twitter over the last couple of years? Like, their algorithm, like, he's financially incentivizing people to be racist, transphobic trolls. On Threads, they were like, yeah, we're not doing politics. You can post about it, but we're not going to give it to anybody. Is that not manipulating the algorithm? Like, now they're backing up a little bit on that, but there's no, the social media companies are so large and they cost so much money to set up and run that the only people that can set them up are incredibly wealthy people who are about as biased as you can possibly be towards the status quo, towards, stuff that's going to benefit corporations and the wealthy. And so, like, yeah, it's easy to point to TikTok and be like, they've got a vested interest in certain politics, but what platform doesn't at this point? And honestly, I would need to hear a better argument for why. Like, I don't even think the bias of TikTok can compare to what I see this week out of Mark Zuckerberg. He seems way more biased, and he's manipulating those platforms more than the Chinese Communist Party. I trust the Chinese Communist Party 1,000 times more than I trust Elon Musk in terms of what effect he's gonna have on a social media platform. So I don't know, call me crazy, but that's the way I think.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.